Well, hello once again, everyone. This is Bob Martin, the RCSubGuy with the Nautilus Dry Docks, and as you can see, there's a boat on the bench that I'm dying to introduce you to. So the astute submarine aficionados amongst you are going to recognize the silhouette of this boat. Yes, this is the American Skipjack class submarine based on the Mobius Models kit in 1/72nd scale. Yes, this is a plastic model conversion, originally envisioned for static display only, but well suited for conversion to remote controlled operation, as you are about to see. I want to take a few minutes, show you how this particular boat was put together, and get it in the water so you can see how it works. So I want to give you a little bit of background on this particular boat before we go any further. I did not build this one out. This was actually originally constructed by a talented gentleman by the name of Rob Stone, who did all of the work that you see before you. Now, as I mentioned, the hull itself is a plastic model kit, styrene plastic, and basically converted this to full RC operation. Heart and soul of any RC submarine is the watertight cylinder, and in this particular case, it is a unit put out by a company called R&R Engineering. Mr. Ron Perot out of the UK. Amazing quality of watertight cylinders. I'm going to show you how this works here in a little bit. Control comes from a little bit overkill. This is a Futaba T9 cap on 72 megahertz, 9-channel FM low frequency radio. Kind of overkill for this because this is only a 4-channel boat. You got a 9-channel radio there. Now that we know what we're talking about, let me show you what we're dealing with. So here we are, the major components: watertight cylinder, hull, and radio system. I want to start with the most important part, the watertight cylinder. As I mentioned, this is put out by company called R&R Engineering, and the design and layout is really cool. So unlike most watertight cylinders that you're going to get, the ballast tank is not integral to the outside cylinder wall. It's actually integrated to the equipment tray. The neat thing about that is you can literally undo the back and slide all the guts out in one big tray. Then what you're going to find with this, it makes organization much easier. You're not pulling end caps off and having to have like extra wire to allow you to remove it. So it's a nice design. As with all watertight cylinders, there's a little bit of a compromise in that the actual ballast tank itself is reduced in volume because it actually has to fit inside the outer diameter of the exterior casing. That being said, it's really not a big deal. You can just extend the length of it in a typical situation. What we have here, starting at the front, let's start on the bottom. We have a 2200 milliamp hour lithium polymer battery pack, fits in there really nicely. And then you got your main connection, and that is basically your on-off switch by connecting that. We got 2 electronic speed controllers. Why, you say? There's only one motor. Well, the other one actually provides power and impetus to the ballast pump at the back. So you have one for the motor and one for the ballast pump. We got our receiver here, an automatic pitch controller, and then we get into our ballast tank. Now I want to talk about how this ballast system actually works. If you take a look at it, the intake, it's kind of foggy in there, actually sits down a little lower, about here. So when this completely floods, the water is forced out this vent hose right here and out to the surface, and actually out this little mast right here, this little whip antenna. What that does is it leaves a little air pocket. So you've always got a little bit of air in the top of your ballast tank. If you're fully submerged, what ends up happening is, because of the exceptionally small diameter of the intake there, air can get out, but water can't get in. So when you hit the blow cycle, the pump starts pumping water out of the ballast tank. It creates a vacuum in here, a partial vacuum. That air bubble expands, provides positive buoyancy. Up you come. The intake breaches the surface, the pressure equalizes, and you can surface your boat accordingly. Another neat thing that you're going to see in here is this little black wire, and that's the antenna for the receiver. And what Rob did here, rather than running like 2 hoses, he actually just ran the antenna in the air intake line. So this actually goes all the way out, and it ends, I think you can maybe see it right there at the end. So it kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone. You got your intake and a waterproof housing for your antenna. Moving into the back, we have our main water pump, and this is a reversible 2-way pump, our rudder servo, our pitch servo, and our main drive motor. Now you're going to see something floating in here that's not connected to anything. The way that Ron engineered this is actually the on-off switch, so you can turn the model on and off. Unfortunately, when Rob put this together, he chose not to utilize that, and that simplifies things. It removes something from the equation that could potentially fail on you, but it does mean that in order to turn the model on and off, you have to plug and unplug the battery. Now, fixing that is not a big deal at all, or wouldn't be if Rob didn't utilize these absolutely massive wires to go to these 2 motors. There's a conduit that you can see that goes through the middle there, and it is completely and utterly full of wires right now. There is no way to splice into this main power wire out to the switch and back again. Solution to that, if somebody did want to upgrade this, just remove these wires and replace them with something, like a 16 gauge. And that'll leave you lots and lots of room to run that power back in, so you can have that on-off switch from the exterior of the watertight cylinder. I elected not to do that for a couple of reasons. Number 1, I'm lazy. And number 2, the new owner needs to become intimately familiar with this watertight cylinder. And this is such a simple job that doing that will allow you to completely understand, the wiring aspect of the boat, and get your hands just a little bit dirty so you understand how the cylinder goes together, how the cylinder works. Very, very important. And just to finish up, we're out to the back there. You can see the outputs for the rudder, for the main drive shaft, which has a super cool coupler that you can see there. It's like a little bit of a shock absorber. And then you've got the water port that sucks in and discharges the ballast water. Access to the hull, pretty easy. It's held on magnetically, so if you just kind of grab the bottom of the hull and then pull on the top, pops right off, gets you into the boat. Now that is not a common way of getting hull access. Typically there's a fastener of some kind. So if we look back here, we've got a lip, and that fits underneath here. It locks the stern in. And then on the front, you've got all these magnets that hold the front down. The reason you can get away with that is because there is no flotation in that upper hull. Basically, the buoyancy of the watertight cylinder itself provides 98% of the buoyancy or flotation required to float this boat at the correct water line. The only thing that I needed to add was just a couple of little tiny blocks right there. Looking in the bottom of the hull, you can see all of the self-adhesive ballast weights that were put in place to trim the boat out. The other side of the coupler, the other side of the magnetic connections in there, and of course, all of your control surfaces right there. Installation of the watertight cylinder could not be easier. So all we're going to do, and I'm going to do this one-handed, that's how easy it is. We're just going to slip that little intake in that notch in the bottom there. We're going to make sure we line up our coupler here so it doesn't get snagged. Slip the front of the cylinder in, and now we can just make up our magnetic connections. And in order to do this one up, you need to fire up your radio, hit the planes forward, and that is going to extend your, there we go. And now all of the linkages have been made up. We got this in here because this is just offset a little bit. This is just reinforcement to make sure it doesn't buckle. So this is like a double extra strong connection in there. Once that's all done, you're just going to grab these rubber bands and you just slip them over the top. Again, it's just doing this all one-handed. It's super easy. And that locks your cylinder in place, making sure it doesn't float up off of the saddle. Now, the last thing that you're going to need to do, you take a look in the bottom there, there's a little coupler right there, a little brass tube. This I can't do one-handed, but you just connect your air intake hose right there. And now your intake is fully connected and ready to go. So there is the made up connection. We're just going to pull this in, make sure our hose is not trapped by the hull. Slip the back in, drop the front down. We're done. Ready to go. The actual controls on the radio are about as easy as it gets. You've got your throttle. You've got your dive planes for diving. You've got your rudder for steering. And then blue for ballast. If you flick it up, you'll surface. And you flick it down, you'll submerge. So the trick to utilizing this is to make sure when you dive, when you get to your proper water line, your submerged water line, you return it back to neutral. Now, if you don't, it's not a big deal. The pump will just cycle water. But you don't want to eat up your battery if you don't have to, right? And it's the same thing with the surfacing. You want to make sure you turn it off once the boat is fully surfaced. The neat thing about the way that this is plumbed, when that ballast tank is full and the intake gets to the water level, the pump will pump water out here. So you get just a little tiny stream, and that indicates that your ballast tank is completely full. Just a little visual indicator that you got yourself to the right spot.
Well, there you go, everyone. That is an overview of this 1/72nd scale U.S. Skipjack class RC submarine, originally built by Rob Stone, but finished up, trimmed, tested, and brought to you by none other than Bob Martin, the RCSubGuy with the NautilusDryDocks.com. If you like what you see, please like and subscribe. It helps me out a lot to bring you lots more awesome content just like this one. If you have any questions or comments, drop it down below. I will reply as soon as I can, but you can always hit me up, Bob at NautilusDryDocks.com. I'll get back to you a heck of a lot sooner. With that, I am going to let you go. Thank you for joining me, and we'll catch you next time.